Okay, let us call to order the meeting of the Clarkson Independence District Library Board of Trustees for October 19th, 2015. The meeting is called to order at 5:32. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Jan Gaffney?
Here.
Michelle Ginn?
Here.
Jan Green absent. Mary Himberg?
Here.
Sarah Lamb absent. Allison McFadden Keaton absent. Carolyn Pomeroy?
Here.
Julie Meredith here.
Okay, I'll accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Call to the public.
Hi. Right now, we are in the midst of probably the busiest time for the Friends. Summer is very quiet, but we hit the autumn months and we are running full force. We just finished a successful fall used book sale, and last Thursday night we had our fall general membership meeting. We have 2 a year, and I was very pleased. We actually had about 20 members show up outside of the board members, including 2 of our trustees, Marilyn and Michelle. And it was good to hear other viewpoints and people looking at things differently than how we had looked at certain things that were up on the floor for discussion and then voting on. After a while, if it's just the board, we kind of have a common way of thinking and focusing. So it was very good to have input from other members of the Friends. And I felt it was a very positive evening. And our next big event will be the holiday sale. It's the first weekend in December. We'll use that Friday, December 4th to set up. And it's come to the attention of the Friends as the library and you as the trustees, the governing board, are now able to start expanding the vision and meeting the needs of the community and becoming a 21st century library, that we ourselves in the Friends have to look at what we're doing to supplement the library and to be a right-hand source. We have to start looking at it differently. In the past, due to lack of funding, over many, many years, we, as you know, did help actually supplement necessities. Now we're looking at the librarians getting together and coming up with wonderful, wonderful ideas for expanding the vision and the needs of the community, or meeting the needs of the community. And so we now are having to think in a totally different way. So we are going to use this next coming year kind of to see what direction the library, the governing board, what directions they're going to be going into, and then what our role will be more defined as. But through this all, we are, of course, a funding resource for the library.
Thank you very much. We'll end the call to the public at this moment, and I'll accept a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have 5 items on the consent agenda. No one wishes to question any one of them. In that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Consent agenda is approved. Next, library statistics.
You have the statistics reports for the month and year to date. We did have the battery in our people counter went out. Usually it doesn't happen this early in the year, but so we're missing a week before we discovered that the battery went out. So the numbers are a little bit off this month. Not because there was less usage, but because our counter wasn't in place. So that's just, this month's statistics are just
A little skewed.
little skewed, yeah, a little bit skewed. So.
Didn't notice anything really different because of the pavement caving?
You know, it's interesting. It seemed like people were still coming, and they weren't. The first day that they were working on it, we still had a lot of people that were coming and going. We had one person who phoned and wasn't very happy about the project, but I think that after, I think Debbie actually talked to that person and kind of explained what was going on and whatever, and she seemed to be okay with it after that. Most of the feedback we've been getting has been really positive. We did have one day, or 2 days, that we actually closed in our checkout system because it was so hard to get in and out of the parking lot, and they were blocking one driveway and they were blocking the other driveway, and so we did. People still came, but we sent out an email and said, you know, if you can't make it today, don't worry about it. We've created a grace period. So yeah.
I want to say, as I came in, that the gentlemen working on the parking lot were very friendly in waving us on and directing,
Right, pointing which way you needed to go.
pointing which way to go.
Yeah.
I didn't see any,
Right.
I just thought that they were very professional and,
Yeah, they didn't act like, would you just get out of my way?
right, they were
No,
very friendly. Said, we understand, and here's the way you go at this moment, which of course could have changed 15 minutes from then. When you came back out of the library, it might be a different exit.
Very true. That's very, very true. We did have one morning where they were closing it on and off before we opened, and we had a couple staff members who had to park at the church across the street, but we had already talked to the church across the street, and so they were okay with it. So everything has gone much more smoothly than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be a much bumpier ride than it was. So
It's always nice.
it is kind of, actually it was sort of reassuring. It gave me hope for next year, because next year is another, phase 2 is a big project, so.
But this, I think, was really difficult because it was that main road coming in.
Right.
Well,
The other
next year
part.
is the entrance to the actual building, so.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm worried about that one
tricky,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be tricky, but we'll talk more about it during the meeting, but I talked to the engineer, and he has no intention of shutting us down. He wants to figure out how to bid it out and get it done without that.
Super.
Good, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, library director's report.
In general information, in 1998, the library had a grant to create a website of historic information about the Clarkston area called the Community Information Network, or CIN. This site, including a walking tour of the historic district and the city of the Village of Clarkston, was created by Susan and Bill Basinger. The valuable information on this website is used by homeowners, city officials, and students doing projects on local history. The content is excellent, however, the site itself is still supported by very basic technologies, preventing it from being user-friendly on modern mobile devices. Community members have commented that, if updated and marketed properly, that it could become a real gem of the library's website to community members and visitors interested in Clarkston's rich history. The library's IT coordinator and I have gathered a committee that includes the original designer of the site, as well as residents who have expressed interest in helping bring the site into the 21st century. And we're in the initial stages of reviewing the site as it is now and what we would like it to become in the future. So.
That's pretty exciting, actually.
It is. It's really kind of a neat thing. It was suggested to us by a resident that it needs to be a walking app, so that when you're downtown, you can sort of use your phone to walk the historic district and learn about the houses as you walk down the street.
And we've been kind of looking for something, to start making
Yep.
some changes, and that sounds like a really good.
It's a neat project. It's a neat idea. So we're kind of we're working with a local web company, and they're going to help us kind of just go over what our options are and try and figure out how to transition the site and what the various options are in terms of making it mobile friendly. Plus, the Historic District Commission uses the site to do research on the houses because, of course, there are limitations to what you can do to a historic home since these are historically recognized as well as just being historic. So they're using that data, and we're talking about a way that we can create not only the website, but then have a password-protected area where they can keep their data about the houses themselves in the system with that. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, a lot of conversations about how we can make this a nice collaboration with the city. So.
I think it's great that the conversation is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, and it's nice, it's a nice thing for the library to get involved in as we're looking for new things to do.
Well, it also ties back into, you may remember that back in May we talked about the Night at the Museum, which is when the second graders, part of their curriculum is the local history. And so they take a tour, they take a walking tour of downtown, and then they came and they took a tour of the museum here in the library, and then the library itself in terms of what we have as historic materials. We taught the kids about what we have, and then we had the Night at the Museum, which was after the library was closed. They came in with their parents, and they taught their parents what they had learned about the library and the museum. And one of the things that we do show them is that walking tour, but the walking tour, because the technology, it's basically raw HTML, and because it's so old, it's not as user-friendly for the kids. And so that was one of the things that came up, is that we can make it more kid-friendly, so that it's something more compelling
Fits their
for them.
curriculum better.
Mhm. Yeah, so, and that's the other thing, there was sort of a vision from one of the gentlemen on the committee who is a retired teacher who said, wouldn't it be great if they could take their iPads as they're doing the historic tour and using that to learn about the houses as they walk on the tour. So, so those are the kinds of things that we're trying to take into consideration. In terms of finances, the library has received the draft of a contract from the township's attorney regarding the OPEB funds that have been held in trust by the township in the library's name. The library's accountant, director, board treasurer, and board president met to review this document, and I have a meeting with the library's attorney to discuss the contract on October 21st. So we'll get her feedback and see what she has to say about that. So there'll be more information on that on the team. Building and grounds phase 1 of the library's parking lot project is coming to a close. Yay! The finishing asphalt was laid on Saturday, October 17th. There was a slight flurry, so we can't say that we got it done before the snow flew, but we tried. The project engineer should be visiting the site in the next few days to make a final inspection, and we'll be talking about phase 2 later in the meeting. And for collaborations and projects, the library's director and business and marketing librarian attended the 3-day American Library Association Libraries Transform Communities seminar presented by the Harwood Institute. This training will feed directly into the community engagement portion of the library's strategic planning process, and a further discussion of this topic will also be later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving to regular business. Review of the third quarter financials and budget adjustments.
Okay, so before you have the third quarter financial report. You'll want to start on the side where the first account is 403 property taxes. It should be in the right order in your packet, but I know sometimes when I do them double-sided, it makes it hard for you guys to tell which page to be on.
So it's on the back of the meeting agenda form.
Oh. This one here?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't see it. Thank you.
Okay, did everybody find it?
Got it.
Okay, I know this is always,
We looked at it online, but it looks a little different when you're
looking at the
in
print
paper.
paper. So the accountant gave me a list of things that she wanted us to go over. The first one that she wanted us to look at was line 716, which is probably about 2/3 of the way down the first page. That's health insurance. She is concerned that we have spent more so far than would be budgeted. You'll remember the first column is the actual budget. The second column is how much we should spend at the 9-month mark. The third column is how much we actually spent at the 9-month mark. And then the last column is how much is left in that budget. And basically she says there's not enough to get us to the end of the year, so we need to watch that, and we will need to make a budget adjustment before the end of the year. But she thought we might want to forego doing that at this juncture. We want to do it really close to the end of the year to make sure that we're putting in a pretty accurate
So we don't
amount of
have to
money.
do a second.
Exactly, exactly. So that one is one that we are watching. On the next page, 807, the audit. That is $1,000 over budget, and I will admit, that one was my fault. When we did the last budget adjustment, I thought all the bills were in and there was one more bill. So we need to move $1,000. I would recommend, at this point, I would recommend moving it from legal. We have $4,696 left out of a $5,000 budget, and even with the discussions about the OPEB contract, I think we're going to have plenty of money in that line item. So I would recommend moving $1,000 from legal to audit, and that was also the accountant's suggestion. She was concerned about 818, which is professional and contract services. Mostly she was concerned because we had spent more at the 9-month mark than what would be budgeted if we were spending evenly. In this case, I'm going to suggest that we're not really concerned about that because there was a large chunk of money in there to pay the engineer, and we've completely paid the engineer. There are no more payments to the engineer, so that's why we made a big payment to him, and there's nothing else to be paid out. So I think the rest of the year, even though it looks like we've spent more than we should have, I don't think that's really the case. Under 818.740, miscellaneous, special events, that is it's a line item where we usually put programs that don't fit under any of the other line items. And essentially what happened in that particular situation is we had not yet created a line item for the business library. You'll remember that we didn't do that until, I think, February or March. So I would suggest maybe just we have plenty of money in our, in 740.1 operating supplies, and just putting $20 in that line item in order to get it balanced out. She also was concerned about 910 insurance. That's not health insurance, that's building and liability insurance. This one comes up every year. This is because we pay this insurance at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So we paid it all. So she did flag it for me to talk to you about it, but there's nothing to be concerned. We've made all the payments. So actually there's a surplus in that line item.
You mentioned this last year too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We do it, we pay two quarterly payments early in the year, and then we pay a halfway, the half amount payment or a double payment in about June, July, and then we're done. So the nice thing about the insurance is that there may be a reimbursement later in the year if, because of the kind of insurance that we have, if there are not a lot of claims over the course of the year and that trust fund gets to be too high. That's what happened last year, and that's why it's actually, there's surplus money in that account, because we did get a reimbursement from last year at the beginning of this year. So that's why there's money left over there. 921 electrical. She was concerned about that one. I don't know that I'm really concerned about it yet. I think it has more to do with the fact that we spend more in the summer for air conditioning, and what's going to happen is, as we go into the fall, is that the amount we're paying for heat will go up and the amount we're paying for electrical will go down.
Just like at home.
It's not an even month by month, so I think that one I would like to watch, and we can make a judgment call on that. She will do, like she did last year, she'll do, obviously the fourth quarter wouldn't happen until January, but we have to have all our budget adjustments made in December. So what she'll do is she'll do a sort of year-to-date about the first week of December that we'll go over at our meeting in December, and then we can make all final budget adjustments based on estimate. Excuse me. So that one I'm not real concerned about. 931, building and grounds maintenance. We're still learning how much work needs to be done in this building. We've made budget adjustments on this one already. There's still a lot of work to be done in it. And this line item also includes snow plowing, which we haven't even gotten to that yet. And hopefully we won't need too much, but you never know. I'm not so concerned about where this money can come from. We actually put quite a lot of money into 964.703 refunds and rebates. This was the first year that we've done those MTT rebates entirely on our own, and we didn't know how much money we were going to end up paying out.
Right.
And I'm really surprised that so far we've only paid out, what, $1,950 out of a $20,000 budget. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling that it would probably be okay if we took it from that line item and put it in for building and grounds maintenance. And there are a few other line items that I think as we get a little bit further in the year, we're going to find some
Surpluses.
surplus to help cover that. But I think that we could probably safely move $10,000 from that line item into building and grounds maintenance.
Which line item again?
964.703, it's the third from the bottom.
Okay. I got you.
So that would be my suggestion on that. Printing and publishing, 900. She was concerned because for this point in the year, we would should have spent $15,000 and we've spent $15,573. I'm not really concerned about that one either because we do 3 newsletters a year, not 4. And so when you divide out that payment, we've already paid for the fall newsletter, so
So there
I
will be
think we're
surplus.
Hmm?
Then there will be a surplus in there.
Perhaps.
Possibly. But I think it's too early to make a call on that one.
Okay.
Because I sat down with Christina and we were pretty careful about how much we budgeted for that line item. We may get to the end of the year and she may need a little bit extra, but I don't think that there's anything to be alarmed about at this point. I think it's a watch line item. Just keep an eye on it. And then technical services, 740.2. That's another one that doesn't spend evenly. That's Brad's line item that he's been using for his recasing projects. And so he's been purchasing the cases in large quantity while he redoes large amounts. So I'm not worried about that one. He didn't seem to think that he would go over budget. And then in terms of operating supplies, 740.1, I think there's going to be extra money in that line item. We were still trying to figure out, when we budgeted those line items, how much of it are we spending on operating supplies and how much are we spending on technical services? And I think that we may have overestimated operating supplies. And of course, we have Brad really paying close attention to technical services for us. So I think there's going to be a little bit of surplus in 740.1 and 740.2. I think is going to be right on the mark. So. So the 3 line items that I would recommend making changes to were the audit of $1,000 from legal. The miscellaneous, the 818.740. I would say we could, as I said, I think 740.1 operating supplies is going to have a surplus, so I'd say we could probably move $20. 740.1. And then that 931, and I suspect this won't be the last time we'll have a conversation about 931. Grounds. I'd say $10,000, and I would suggest taking it from that refunds and rebates, 964.703.
Okay, do we want to deal with these as 3 separate items or combine them?
Can do it either way.
Might as well combine.
We'll see the brave person who's going to make this motion, please.
Well, I read them all for you, so you can
Yes.
just do them as presented at this point.
Okay.
I would move that we approve budget changes as presented.
I'll second.
That was easy. Okay, any further questions or comments about where we're taking things from and putting them to? Okay, if not, all those in favor of these budget adjustments as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank her.
She worked hard on this one. We had some things that needed to be.
Well, as we feel our way through these new years of operating independently, I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to stay pretty much on track
I
here.
think so too. I think so too. We have a lot to be proud of.
And therefore, let us move to removal, snow plowing.
Okay.
It's bound to come up eventually.
Well, usually we do it before it actually snows, but there were snow flurries on Saturday. I'm just saying. For the past 3 seasons, the library has contracted with D&W Services LLC as our snow plowing contractor. Dale Graves has offered us the same services that we contracted him to do last season using the same pricing structure. This would include the originally approved contract to do the primary priority snow removal, as well as the amended portion of the contract that was approved in February for the secondary priority clearing of the safety path along Clarkson Road and sidewalk on the east side of the building in response to requests from our residents. Dale's worked very hard for the library for the past 3 seasons. He's quick to respond to staff calls for assistance and has gone the extra mile even when the library was working with an extremely tight budget. But I thought, well, I'll bring it to the board, and this is what he has offered. We could go with this, or I can go ahead and bid it out. It's entirely up to you.
I think if we found a dependable person, we should stick with him, unless he doubled his prices, which he couldn't. So I would move.
Yeah, I mean, if you were raising the price, that would be one thing, but to hold the price, and it was a good price when we got it, and I can't imagine that his costs have gone down significantly, so.
Maybe just fuel.
But that fluctuates,
Yeah.
so it's really, that's
No,
kind
to
of,
me,
he's
I mean-
taking a chance on that,
Yeah.
you know, but, I mean, but that's his business, and I'm sure he's factored that in. I don't
So,
see a problem.
I'll
with it.
move that we approve D&W Services as our contractor for snow plowing services for the 15-16 season, and authorize the library director to sign the contract.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we stay with D&W Services. Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. I will call Dale tomorrow. All right. Okay, now the parking lot.
Okay, so we're basically to the wrap-up of Phase 1 with much rejoicing.
Yes.
Went very smoothly, as I said before. I talked to Albert, who is our engineer, and I said to him that we would like to be more proactive going into Phase 2. And I suggested that we probably would like to bid it out before the end of this year. And he suggested that would be very wise on our part. So what I had him do was put together an opinion of probable costs for Phase 2. This looks very familiar. This is how he laid it out for us last year. But he made adjustments based on what it actually cost us to do Phase 1. So it is obviously more expensive than what the original estimates were. However, he and I have been discussing this for quite some time, and so this is actually how I budgeted it for next year. This is already budgeted.
No surprise.
No surprises, there is no surprise here. However, if we want to do the bid process before the end of this year, this money is budgeted next year. So I guess what I need is some direction from the board. If we want to, we could, I actually think there may be enough money in the budget to be able to budget what we need, but the possibility of taking out a fund balance this year in order to fund the engineering for next year, and then next year, that money that we would have budgeted for the engineer we won't need, we'll put it back in fund balance essentially. Although I think we may be able to trim a few things here and there and have the money. I'm not sure.
And it may not, right.
Right, because you're only talking about the prep costs. For
He
him
would like to
put
do
the-
all the surveying for next year,
Oh, okay.
this year. So he's thinking of this outside, they're looking at this 134 plus 20,000 for contingencies. That's the actual asphalt work. And then there's 24 that he's talking about that would be the prep, the surveying, and the engineering, and all of that kind of stuff that would come on the front end of it.
So that would be.
All of
you'd
that,
need
wouldn't some of that be supervising the construction? So
Well,
it wouldn't
that's-
even be the whole 20?
That's why I said to him, so how do you see this breaking down? He's estimating that it would probably be about 15 this year and the rest of it next year. He did say that they were willing to work with us a little bit. If 15 was too rich for our budget this year, they could push some of the costs into next year and whatever. We did budget for this though, so
Yes.
it's not that we're not budgeted. We're just not budgeted to do it in November, which is when we'd like to do it, so.
Given our challenges this year, I would definitely go along with the engineer's suggestion about trying to do this.
Right, because they don't know what work they're going to have next year. They'll be a little more interested in bidding on a small job, and it will be easier to get on their schedule when they don't have a full schedule for next year.
But if we could find that much money, and if they might take a little less this year, without, borrowing from people, maybe we could do that.
I think it's a wise thing to do. One of the problems that we'll have is if we wait and don't start until January, then all of that surveying and whatever won't get done until the snow melts. The other problem is that puts us in the position we were in this year, which they didn't do the survey until spring,
Right.
which put us in September. What I would really like to see us do is get all of this done, say in May, because we have 4 months a year where we have some slowdown. January, well, we're not going to do it in January. May, which is as people are sort of wrapping up the school year, we get a little slow. And then June, July, and August are our 3 busiest months of the year. Late in August, early in September is okay, like right around Labor Day. But you'll notice we tried to hit that this year and missed it by a mile.
Yeah.
And then December, which of course we're not going to do it in December. So I would really like to shoot to get it done in the spring, in May, if at all possible. If we want to do that, we need to be on the front end. We need to be bidding it out and making a decision, say, in December.
Right, and you're going to see him this week. He's going to come out and
Yep.
inspect. All right. I think we're in agreement.
I think so. Do we need a motion though?
At this point, I don't think so. What I'm going to have him do is let him know that this is the direction that we want to go and have him start to kind of give us an accurate estimate, more accurate. I mean, he was giving me a ballpark this morning, and I was saying to him, I need something to talk to the board about. But have him construct a genuine list of what he intends to do between now and December. And then we could make a budget adjustment, say in November, to be able to pay him November, December, and get it all taken care of so that we can get that project done. And for next year, the project is that driveway that goes around the island and then the main entrance. And it is his intention to keep us open throughout, even though it's the entrance, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but they did it this year. I wasn't sure they were going to do this either.
It's
Yeah,
just moving people, rather.
Yeah, it does seem a little trickier when it's the main entrance as opposed to that, because there are 2 drives out there, even if one is technically in and one is out, but.
He really suggested that they would probably, because we're talking about pouring concrete and things like that, he thinks that the actual slab that's right outside the 2 main front doors is structural, that we wouldn't be touching that. That it would be the concrete around it, because that one is still pretty firm. And so I think what he's thinking they'll do is they'll pour this half around it and let people go in this way, and then they'll pour this half around it, let people go in this way. Kind of like they did with the driveway.
Well, he's an engineer.
I know.
It's a great goal.
It is a great goal.
Keeping open is a real goal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
well, they've worked with us well up to this point,
Yes.
so that sounds good.
And the contractor that is, we talked this year, we had trouble because the contractors were all so busy and we were having trouble getting bids. The contractor that did this project, they're now invested in us, and they're actually really interested in bidding on next year's project and doing phases 2 and 3. So we know that we've got somebody interested. At least we were struggling last year. And if we bid early, we should get multiple bids.
Hopefully.
So, yeah.
And we know that we've been happy with the way they
Yep.
did everything, so.
Yeah, they were very easy to work with. I was pleased. I was a little bit concerned about this. It was a very big project for us, and it's a small project for them. They do roads. To them it was no big deal. To us, it was, life-changing. So,
Really?
and they were very sensitive to that, which I thought was really nice. It's, being a big company, I wasn't sure that was how we were going to be treated, but they really were very sensitive to the fact that it was a big deal for us.
We wanted to provide the service while
Yep.
they were providing
Hopefully they
us.
will give us a competitive bid for.
Yeah,
I hope
Yes,
so.
that would be nice.
All right. So you
Good.
have direction
I
from
have
us?
direction. I'm good.
All right, let's look at an update on strategic planning. It's going to be a big project coming up here.
Indeed. In 2011, with the help of the Friends, the library conducted focus groups and gathered community input through a survey. The results of that work led us through a successful reestablishment process, which allowed us to fulfill many of the key aspirations the community had for its library. However, that process forced our organization to focus inward as we struggled to solve a 40-year-old legal issue and create a structure for the 21st century. Now we are poised for the future with a community anticipating a new vision for its library. Now we need to turn our organization outward as we gather feedback to develop that vision and create a strategic plan. The American Library Association has developed a campaign called Libraries Transforming Communities, in which they created a partnership with the Harwood Institute to train the leadership and staff of libraries how to turn outward, how to listen to their community's aspirations, and turn that knowledge into the strategies and actions that embed the library as an integral part of its community. Library Director and the Business and Marketing Librarian attended the Harwood Institute's 3-day Public Innovators Lab hosted by the American Library Association in Detroit last week. And this will be an initial discussion of the Harwood Institute's foundational ideas. So in your packet, I did give you a couple of essays that kind of talk about what the foundational ideas are for the Harwood Institute. And it really is about how everything that you do should be directly engaging the community. And even the words that you're using, like we always talk about outreach, but outreach is when you go out into the community and you tell them the wonderful things that you're already doing. Whereas they're saying that what you're looking to do is a community engagement, where you go out into the community and you listen to what people need, and then you respond by making sure that you're doing those things and incorporating additional things. So one of the steps that they talk about is community conversations, where you define a community that you want to discuss, and you talk about that community's aspirations. What is the vision for that community? And then what are the issues that are preventing you from getting to those aspirations, and what are the things you can do to get to those aspirations, and what are the small action steps, and start moving in that direction. So you can actually do a community conversation about any size community. So one of the things that Melissa and I did at this workshop is we actually, instead of defining all of Clarkston as our community, we did turn inward a little bit. And we defined the library as our community and where we are. And on the last page of your packet, there are stages of life of a community, and it's some suggestions of do's and don'ts, the things that are happening in a community. And those stages are the waiting place, impasse, catalytic, growth, sustain, and renew. And so we talked about kind of how in our situation with the library that we were in a waiting place where we were stuck under this dead law. We didn't know what to do. It was creating all these issues. We went into this impasse where no matter what we tried to do with our funding, we just kept running into all of these issues. Catalytic was when we actually took action and we reestablished the library. So our internal community, we're at a growth stage. So if we talk for just a minute about what that means, what you want to do in the growth stage is use community-wide engagement activities to coalesce and spring forward from this stage. You want to do bigger projects building on the natural progression and collaborations that have come before. And we do have a lot of collaborations within the community. Reinforce the positive norms for working together and continue to develop boundary-spanning organizations and new leaders. And things to think about, who's already doing this work within our organization, who are the new people that want to get involved in these efforts, and how are the new efforts affected to the work that's been done before. So that was the first place where we sort of started. So what we would like to do at this point is work with the board and have you have a community conversation at some point about sort of where we are in the direction we want to head, not only about our internal community, but then about the community as a whole. We want to do that with the staff. And then we want to go out into the world, out into the community, and have these community conversations that are about the community itself. No longer about the library, but about what are the aspirations for the Clarkston area, and what are the issues that are involved, and how can the library be a part of moving the whole community forward in various ways. So the last thing I want to do in order to spur some conversation, and it looks like our fabulous IT person is going to stand right there. I do have a video of Rich Harwood from the Harwood Institute talking a little bit about what we learned on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
We each face a fundamental choice if we want to be the most impactful public innovators we can be. It has to do with the direction that we face. We need to turn outward toward our communities. Turning outward is an orientation, a posture, a stance, a mindset. Turning outward is when we make our community the reference point for everything we do, not our conference room. After all, it's only when we're turned outward that we can see and hear other people. Only when we're turned outward can we have reality in our line of sight. It's only when we're turned outward that we can know our shared aspirations for what we want to achieve together. Now, here's the problem. I've been doing this work for over 25 years now, and what I keep finding is that so many of us so often are actually turned inward, away from one another. We do this at times without even knowing it, without realizing it. We say we want to hear people's hopes and concerns, but we push them aside, sometimes simply giving lip service to them. Our own desire to position our organization or ourselves takes priority. We create long laundry lists of activities as if that's a good measure of whether or not we're creating impact. When we're turned inward, it's too easy to lose our sense of purpose. The more pressure we're under to be relevant and significant in the life of the community to create impact, the more inward I find people turn. We believe if we just do one more strategic plan, even though we're looking inward, we think we'll be more impactful and relevant. We believe if we just reorganize our staff or organization again and move the seats and org chart around, that somehow that will make our work in the community more impactful and relevant. Heck, we even believe if we create a new logo and pick the right color, that somehow magically that will make us more effective. But here's what I know. It might make you and your organization more attractive, but it won't make you a bit more effective. So our first order of business is to turn outward, to make our community our reference point, not our conference room. When we're turned outward, we can see and hear people, not just what they say, but what they mean. When we're turned outward, we can understand the underlying conditions that exist in our community and what we need to do to create the right foundation for moving forward. And when you're turned outward, you can figure out the right path to take so your strategies and solutions work and create real impact in the lives of people. I do this work because I want to win. I want to create a real difference in the lives of people and in their communities. I know you do too. That's why it's so important to turn outward. When we turn outward, we set ourselves on the path of deeply understanding our communities. When we turn outward, we can unleash people's potential to come together and get things done. When we turn outward, we can develop our collective confidence that we can actually create change together. There's one last thing. Turning outward requires that we make intentional choices, and when we do, it can put us on the path of possibility and hope. Only you can make the choice to turn outward.
Thank you, Bill. So one of the other things that I did include in your packet three pages from the back is a little quiz about being turned inward versus being turned outward. And if you look at it, it's very obvious which way we're supposed to be choosing. But one of the things that we did is talk about this in terms of being very honest with yourself about, are you actually turned outward or are you turned inward? Are you talking about activity or are you talking about action? Are you talking about program or are you talking about people? Are you talking about my organization or the community as a whole? Are you talking about people as consumers or are you talking about people as citizens? Process versus progress. And you can see where we've been turned inward. We've been so sort of embedded in this process of reestablishing and process of getting the library where it needs to be, that now it's time to turn outward and say, okay, we're good, we're solid, we're stable. Now we need to go out to the community and say, what should we be doing? How do we create this vision? Outreach versus engagement. And we've been doing a lot of outreach, going out into the community, but we're doing a lot of going out into the community, and while we're listening, we're also doing a lot of talking. We're saying this is what we're doing already, and it's time for us to start listening to the community in terms of what we should be doing. Public relations versus people's reality, input versus impact, and claiming turf versus coming together. So the next page after that talks about sort of ways that you can be turned outward versus being turned inward. And essentially what happened in this process of strategic planning, we went to a workshop and we were talking about the various ways that you create a strategic plan. And Melissa, as our business and marketing librarian, she and I had talked a lot about what does this mean, and we had talked about surveys and focus groups and that kind of thing. We've done that before, and I was really looking for something different, something interesting, something compelling, and I think this might be the answer, because the conversation is completely different. It's more wide open. It talks about what the community would like to become, and I think that this community has been having those conversations a lot. And then it will open our eyes and open our ears to how we fit into that. The community has told us 68% yes, they want us here. So now we need to make sure that what we're doing is what they actually expect. And I guess it is something that I've been saying all along. People will come to me and they'll say, well, what's your vision for the library? And I keep saying, well, it's not my vision that matters. It's what the community wants. And I've been looking for a way to figure out
What that is.
how to create the vision.
That's the community vision.
Yes,
That's good.
exactly.
Yeah.
But going out and doing those surveys, like we've been doing in the focus, what do you want in a library is not compelling because people don't know.
That's right.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
So this is where you ask the community as a whole, what are your aspirations overall? Do you want the community to be? And then we can start to figure out what that path is and what that direction
So it's how we
is.
fit in. So we want to know what it is that the community needs as a
Yes.
whole.
Yep.
And then how we can make it happen. What's
Yep.
your goal as a community, not for
Yep.
the library? Interesting.
And when you have these community conversations, the goal is not for you, different kinds of problems will come forward. But the library has always been a connector. I mean, when people come in and they ask a question, we give them the answer. Sometimes our answer is to refer them to somebody else. And so one of the things that this has the opportunity to do is to create the library as sort of a central point where if a serious community problem is discussed, we may not be the answer, but we may be able to tie different groups together and
Facilitate.
exactly, facilitate. So this is an interesting and different way of trying to figure out where our place is in the world and to really make the library an integral part, not just us going out and saying, well, these are all the great things that we do, but to really be intimately involved in what's going on in the community.
The other issue, of course, is that the community is a sort of nebulous, large entity.
Yep.
And if we're not careful, then you get fractioned or
More vocal fractions.
Right. And so in really getting out and finding what the community needs, what their aspirations are, what they want, then how do we fit into helping?
And the interesting part, the interesting comment that was made during this is that your tendency when, and we heard this before we started the millage campaign, that libraries are no longer relevant because we have Google. And what he's saying is, when somebody says that to you, your natural instinct is to lean away or to make
To get defensive.
To get defensive, exactly. And when that kind of comment comes up, what he's saying is you're supposed to lean in and listen. Well, why aren't we relevant? And perhaps to them we're not, because we're not offering anything to them that's compelling. And why aren't we offering that to them? Because we're not listening. So, we can spend all day saying, well, this is why we're relevant, or we can listen to why they think we're not relevant and see if there's something that we can do to correct that.
Improve that.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's an interesting way of thinking. It's a very different way of thinking about it.
Thought-provoking.
It's a little bit abstract, but at the same time, I think it is still, it still fits into that same sort of
Right.
survey, focus group sort of thing, but the conversations are bigger and then they become more directed as you go along.
Okay.
Okay?
Was this a one-time only lab?
The Harwood Institute, well, the interesting thing is that they provide a lot of support along the way. As a matter of fact, the last thing you do at the workshop is create action steps that you will do as soon as you get back to your organization. And they do this with United Way and a lot of other nonprofits, but the American Library Association brought them in because they thought it would be connected to libraries. So they created a whole series of workshops specifically for libraries. But the interesting thing about this is that this morning I received an email from one of the consultants as part of this process, and he said to everyone, he was saying, okay, now what action step are you doing today? And I was able to respond and say, I'm talking to my board tonight. So, and I'm showing the video, and we're going to start, we're going to go over some of the essays. Melissa and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about how we might talk to various people on staff and figure out how to get this process started within the staff itself, so. Okay, so we're going to give it a
Fascinating.
try. We're going to give it a try and see how it goes. It's a different way of doing things.
It is, and we've done the earlier step, and we know how we feel when we get the thing about what do you think we should be doing when you don't really know what the capabilities are.
It's a very unhelpful, basically it's a very unhelpful question to ask somebody who doesn't know what they want from the library. And we did struggle with that a little bit. We have the people who are already library users who maybe use other libraries who can say, well, you know, Rochester does this and Orion does that, and we want you to do that too. But that's not helpful for the people who might use the library if they knew what we had, or don't know what they want us
If we
to do.
answered some need that we are not aware of.
And libraries, all kinds of libraries do all kinds of services. And instead of us the staff sitting in meetings and saying, well, we think this is a really neat service, we're going to offer this service, to go out into the community and really make sure that that's a service that would be utilized fully, so that we're investing our funds smartly.
Which is important.
Which is very important. And very practical, so I don't want to throw money at things that are not interesting to people, but at the same time, how do you get that information from them? And the thing that we've really struggled with is when you have those focus groups and you say, well, what do you want the library to do? They end up telling us a lot of stuff we already do, and then it turns into a conversation about, an educational conversation about what we already do. But then it doesn't help us figure out what we're supposed to do next.
Okay.
Okay, it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. So, do you have any questions about this? Does it sound like something that...
It sounds
I
like
would
an interesting
find
approach.
out more about it, you know, read all this and then maybe go online and check it out.
Okay.
And see what our next action step will
Yes,
be.
yes, as a board.
Can we do
Glad we went
I'd
to
be
the workshop.
excited to be part of this.
Well, absolutely, and I think one of the things that we should do, I didn't want, there are some activities about doing actually a community conversation. Like I said, Melissa and I did a little community conversation, just the two of us, about the library itself, and kind of where we thought it was and what our aspirations were for the library. That's a community. You know, it's a small community. The smaller the community, the easier the conversation. The bigger the community, the harder it is. If you can talk about the aspirations of the entire country, that's a community too, but that's a really big community with a lot of different people involved. But what I would suggest is perhaps the board would like to have a workshop type meeting where you can sit down and actually go through some of these activities and try it out. It is really fun and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because people come with all different perspectives. One of the examples they gave is sometimes when you have a community conversation, a common thing that people say as an aspiration for the community is, well, I want my community to be safe. But then when you say to them that, you know, part of that is, well, tell me more, what does that mean? Some people will say, that means I want my child to be able to walk to school without the danger of being hit by a car. Some people might say that, you know, in other communities, I don't know that we have that problem here, but might say, I don't want my child to be abducted or shot. It might be, I don't want my child to be arrested for being the wrong color. I mean, safety means a lot of different things to different people. And until you sit down and have that real conversation about what it means. And the same thing can happen here when you're starting to talk about the community and what the library could be and what kinds of aspirations we could help fulfill. And how do we connect together? You know, we talked earlier about this community information network, and we're talking about a collaboration with the city in terms of being able to help support that historic district, because not only would that be great information for our patrons and for the students, but it's also a way to support to make sure that the city is able to continue making sure that those historic homes are kept up preserved over the course of time. And how can we assist that? So,
All right. So the next step,
It's a win-win to me.
do we want to discuss tonight when would be a good time to have a preliminary workshop before the schedule gets really crowded?
Is everybody come before the horse? You ready for us to do that?
whatever. That's what this discussion was all about. It was about bringing it forward to the board and having you tell me what you think.
I mean, it seems to me that it might be better for us to have a preliminary workshop earlier rather than later, because as we get into November and December, those are not generally real open times to do things.
And how long of a workshop are we envisioning?
To do a full community conversation process, they suggest 90 minutes.
90.
So,
Okay.
but we could do one of the abridged versions and allow discussion for what you learn, or we could schedule the meeting to be 2 hours. But I would suggest it would be probably a 2-hour block of time would be wise.
I just wondered if it was a half day, or, because that obviously is 2 hours is easier to fit in.
Easier to fit in.
Well, and this will be preliminary. The next thing is we're going to start little conversations amongst the staff, and what Melissa and I talked about was the possibility of doing a staff development day where the staff would spend a half day working on this, and then the other half of the day doing something else. So but that would be forthcoming. We have to kind of get this ball rolling.
So how do things look for, let's say, the first 2 weeks in November? We have our next meeting on November 16th.
Okay. Maybe the Monday before that?
November 9th?
If we want to stay on Monday.
Well, Monday is the day which generally we're more open
We think
on.
about that, yeah.
Can we do
we
Monday?
think about
I see daylight savings time ends on the 1st of November.
it. So it'll be dark.
So it'll be dark.
Won't be missing anything, is that what you mean?
Right.
The 9th would be good for me.
The 9th works for me too.
We have the little room that night,
And that's all we need.
and that's really all we need.
Yeah.
Yep.
Allison, how does that work for you?
Is that okay with you?
Thank you, yes. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate it.
Challenging to get there.
Would we like to do?
What
more-
time is best with you?
I was
for
going to say,
you?
would we like to do maybe an after dinner time?
Yeah, because I'm rushing right from work, so
Exactly.
Like a
6 to 8 would be great for
6 to
me.
8,
Is that too late for you
6:30
guys?
to 8:30, would that
6:30
be?
to 8:30 would be
Anytime that
super.
evening would work.
I don't care.
That's fine.
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
care what time.
Yeah, I don't know how that,
6 to 8 or 6:30 to 8, I'm good.
Yeah.
6:30.
either one works fine for
6
me.
to
I don't
8.
know.
6 to 8 is
Okay,
perfect.
okay.
6 to 8.
Thank you very
I
much.
just- I don't want you
really
to-
appreciate it.
I promise I'll bring chocolate.
Oh,
Very important.
It is very important.
I don't know.
Did we say 6 or 6:30?
6.
6 o'clock is great.
Okay.
It's amazing what that half an hour does.
It does, it really does.
Okay, so library workshop, Monday, that's the second Monday in November,
Yeah,
from 6 to 8
right.
in the small
In the
meeting
youth
room.
activities room, and I will do it posted. It is a public meeting, so
Wonderful.
I will get that posted.
I'm so excited for this
Yeah, I
meeting.
like it.
Mhm.
This is
I
great.
think that it's a little bit hard to explain until you get to sit down and actually try it. It feels a little bit bizarre when you're having the conversation about it, but
These things always sound
They
like
do.
that.
They always sound like that, but
But
it's
the-
a,
but the process is really fun, and I
Yeah.
think it's really entertaining, because it does have much more impactful uses. Rich Harwood and the Harwood Institute actually is the consulting firm that went into Newtown after the shooting, and they used this process to determine what to do with the school.
Wow.
So it can be used for very serious sorts of problems, and they walked this whole process of trying to figure out how they were going to handle that situation. But then in our situation, we're looking at something that's very, very positive, and it can be turned that direction as well. So, but it's all about the process of having these conversations. So,
How can we see these videos? Are they just on YouTube? Or
I'll email them to you,
That'd be
and
great.
you can take a look at them. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
and it'll be a part of our meeting recording too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we watch our meeting, it'll
Yep.
be on
Yep.
there. Great.
all right. Any other comments or questions about our first step in this process? Actually, our second step in the process, going to the workshop.
That was the first step for us.
And there's been 2 workshops, so
Right.
yeah, we're
And
really,
because we already have attempted some of the other strategies, and we're looking for something more impactful, so we've already, maybe this is step 3.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about another strategic plan, which, and we've been kind of looking around that, and some of us went to that seminar, and
Right.
it was very interesting. But this is a different way, and this can certainly fit in with what we need to do in terms of strategic
and
plan.
he's not saying don't do a strategic plan.
Right.
And he's not saying don't do a logo. I mean, because that's the other thing we're working on behind the scenes.
I know, I get it. Well, okay, well, we need a new logo because
And
we
he
have a name,
even,
so.
he even admitted that they just redesigned their logo. He's not saying don't do those things, but he's saying if you
Don't
start
think that's
these,
enough.
if you start these conversations, the path that you need to take for your strategic planning becomes a little clearer.
Right.
Because
I've been hoping that would become clearer.
yes, this is it, yes. But we were looking for a new way to do strategic planning instead of just the same old way of doing it. So I'm really excited about this
Yeah,
process.
I am too. I think this will be really good.
Great, George.
Excellent. All right. In that case, on this upbeat note, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn at 6:32.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.